The final season of Stranger Things is dropping very soon, and everyone's asking the same question: who is this kid on the season 5 poster? Well, today we're taking a look at the seemingly innocent chubby kid and why he is much worse than you think. But before we need to start with the question, who even is Derek Turnbow? Derek Turnbow came into Hawkins as the youngest member of the Turnbow family, a wealthy clan for their land development and real estate gig. He is an 8 to 10-year-old overweight kid, an outsider with no friends who is totally rude toward adults. Unlike previous Stranger Things bullies who operated within, Derek is totally different. Troy had his gang of followers. Billy commanded fear and twisted admiration from his classmates. Derek has no one, which makes him more dangerous. Photos and behind-the-scenes footage from the set show Derek appearing in multiple crucial sequences throughout Season 5. It is rumored that he's inside the so-called Turnbow Mansion, with his bedroom being an elaborate 80s-themed Hasbro merchandise room filled wall-to-wall with toys. This obsession with material possessions suggests that he's a kid desperately trying to fill an emotional void with objects, a huge red flag for deeper psychological issues. In plain words, he's no background filler. Most tellingly, Derek seems to be a classmate of Holly Wheeler, Mike and Nancy's younger sister, who becomes a centerpiece of Season 5's story. The Duffer Brothers specifically wanted to recapture the Season 1 feeling by introducing younger children into the mix, and Derek represents the dark opposite of that innocence. But really, why is his role in this new season? Before we go on, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's talk about Derek's story arc. Now, Episode 3 of Stranger Things. Season 5 is titled The Turnbow Trap, pointing us to Derek's importance to the season's arc. Director Frank Darabont helms this episode, a detail that cannot be overlooked. Darabont directed The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, two of the most emotionally devastating and perfectly crafted films in cinema history. The Duffers don't bring in a director of that caliber for filler content. Darabont will probably direct scenes inside the Turnbow Mansion's corridors. Additional photos show Priya Ferguson on set, placing Erica Sinclair in the action as well. Multiple members of the core group participate, and they're using Steve's radio station equipment as part of their strategy. Derek's connection to Erica Sinclair adds another unexpected complexity. Leaks suggest his sister Tina Turnbow might be Erica's best friend, previously mentioned in Season 3 but never shown on screen. If Erica's best friend is Derek's sister, then Erica has personal stakes in protecting the Turnbow mission, even if Derek himself is insufferable. Erica might have to choose between saving Hawkins and saving Tina's little brother. For Duffer Brothers, this is the perfect character crossroad. The timing of the Turnbow Trap in the episode order matters too. As the third episode, it comes in early enough to set up consequences that ripple through the remaining 5 episodes. If Derek survives but becomes compromised by Vecna, he has plenty of time to wreak havoc. If Derek dies, the fallout and guilt from the gang could fracture their unity as they go for the final battle. Either outcome will change the season's trajectory, which is exactly why his character exists. Derek Turnbow is a storyline grenade, and the Duffers are already pulling the pin. Still, this just explores Derek as being a savior of some sort. What if he's the next Billy Hargrove? What if he betrays the gang? Most bullies in Stranger Things possess some redeeming quality or understandable motivation. Troy acted out because of his own insecurities and desire for social dominance. Billy's cruelty comes from a long time of abuse by his father, creating his cycle of violence. We can always trace their behavior to two things: fear or pain. Derek doesn't have any of these. He's rude to adults and a bully to those his age. He doesn't bully to climb the social ladder because he has no friends to impress. He doesn't act out to rebel parents because the Turnbows are actually wealthy and permissive. Derek's cruelty comes from a vacuum, performed for its own sake. That makes him really different from every antagonist the series has presented before. The Hasbro merchandise room reveals something crucial about Derek's way of thinking. This isn't a normal kid's bedroom with posters and action figures. He's got floor-to-ceiling shelving packed with collectible toys. Derek doesn't want friends to share these toys with. He wants the toys themselves, the accumulation of things that belong exclusively to him. This obsession at such a young age suggests emptiness his family's money cannot fill. Children who bully without social motivation or parental trauma typically suffer from deeper issues. They show early signs of antisocial disorders like a lack of empathy, disregard for others' suffering, or a superficial charm to manipulate things to their advantage. Derek's isolation indicates other children naturally avoid him. Kids have excellent instincts for identifying peers who seem off. The fact that no one chooses to be Derek's friend, even children who might overlook his weight or family wealth, means his cruelty is constant and severe enough to make him a pariah. His rudeness toward adults deserves examination too. Most children who disrespect authority do so reactively, responding to adults they perceive as unfair or hypocritical. Derek's disrespect appears proactive, a default setting rather than a defensive move. This means he doesn't respect social hierarchies. When a child rejects the idea that adults deserve respect, it means they've rejected the broader social contract. They don't believe rules apply to them. They don't believe other people's feelings matter. They don't even believe consequences will catch up with their actions. Let's compare him to the other children in Season 5. Holly Wheeler represents innocence in danger. Her classmates appear as victims needing protection from Vecna's curse. Derek stands alone as the bad kid, the one character in his age group without heroic framing. The Duffers deliberately created him to be unlikable, which means his role in the story demands it. You don't introduce a hateable kid character unless that character serves a specific function that gets your audience all riled up. The targeting of peers his age specifically suggests Derek punches laterally rather than down. He's not picking on younger children or those obviously weaker. He's attacking classmates, kids with almost the same strength as him. This requires more cunning than typical bullying. He has to identify vulnerabilities, find moments of isolation, and strike when no one's looking. Derek isn't just mean, he's pretty strategic about his meanness, which makes him a lot more dangerous than we know. And we're about to find out. Everything discussed so far makes Derek a nasty piece of work, a cruel child whose behavior goes beyond every bullying parameter. But that's just the surface. The truth about Derek Turnbow cuts far deeper, into territory Stranger Things has only hinted at with previous characters. He possesses what we describe as a weak mind, and in the world of Stranger Things, mental weakness is a death sentence. We all know Vecna chooses his victims based on psychological vulnerability. Chrissy Cunningham carried eating disorder trauma and her mother's emotional abuse. Fred Benson was consumed by guilt over a fatal car accident. Patrick McKinney endured his father's physical violence. Max Mayfield drowned in grief and self-blame over Billy's death. Each victim had deep wounds that Vecna exploited, psychological cracks he could wedge open until he broke their minds completely. The curse doesn't target the physically weak or socially unpopular. Nah, it targets the emotionally damaged, those with festering trauma Vecna can make into weapons against themselves. Derek's weak mind operates differently than previous victims. He doesn't carry guilt or grief, he's only empty, an emotional void where empathy and connection should exist. That void makes him really vulnerable to possession and manipulation because there's nothing inside him fighting back. When the Mind Flayer possessed Will in Season 2, his love for his friends and family gave him moments of resistance. When it possessed Billy in Season 3, Billy's buried humanity eventually broke through long enough to save Eleven. Both possessed victims had something worth saving, some core of goodness the creature couldn't completely erase. But what happens when Vecna targets someone with no goodness to preserve? Derek's lack of empathy and his enjoyment of others' pain make him the perfect vessel. Vecna wouldn't need to break Derek down or twist his perceptions. He just needs to amplify what's already there. Point Derek in a direction and watch him destroy everything in his path. If Vecna claims Derek, the gang faces an impossible situation. They can't kill a child, even a cruel one, even one serving the enemy. That moral boundary separates them from the monsters they fight. But they also can't let a Vecna-possessed Derek run loose in Hawkins, weaponizing his insider knowledge of the town's geography, the Turnbow family's resources, and the group's own vulnerabilities shared through Erica's connection to Tina. A compromised Derek could reveal hideout locations, sabotage plans, and manipulate his own sister into feeding the heroes false information. The Turnbow trap takes on new meaning under this interpretation. Perhaps the gang isn't trying to save Derek. Perhaps they've already accepted he's too far gone, too dangerous to risk leaving alive or possessed. Derek positioned alone on the hayloft platform, visible through the barn's upper windows, makes perfect bait. Vecna would sense his connection to the compromised child and come to claim or protect his asset. That transforms Derek from antagonist to tragedy. A child whose emotional emptiness made him vulnerable gets sacrificed because saving him endangers everyone else. The Duffers have killed off beloved characters before, but with heroes choosing sacrifice. Killing off a child, even a hateable one, crosses a different line entirely. It forces the audience to ask uncomfortable questions about who deserves saving, and whether tactical necessity justifies sacrificing those we find morally repugnant. Still, there's something important we must know. Season 5 will complete the circle. Stranger Things began in 1983 when Will Byers vanished into the Upside Down. That first disappearance happened to an innocent child loved by friends and family, someone worth tearing apart dimensions to save. Holly Wheeler's disappearance in Episode 2 mirrors Will's abduction, but Derek Turnbow's fate might complete a darker circle. Billy started as a big villain, racist and violent and cruel without apparent motivation. Season 3 revealed his abuse-scarred past and allowed him a hero's death, changing years of toxicity in a single moment of sacrifice. The Duffers faced criticism for that redemption arc, accused of excusing Billy's racism and and violence because of trauma. Some viewers argued that abuse doesn't justify becoming an abuser, that Billy's victims deserved acknowledgement and his redemption denied them. Derek represents the inverse of Billy's trajectory. Where Billy received humanization and redemption, Derek received neither. His cruelty exists without tragic backstory justification. His isolation stems from his own toxicity rather than circumstance. When Vecna targets him, the story won't frame it as a tragic corruption of innocence. It'll frame it as an inevitable consequence. Derek's weak mind and emptiness positioned him perfectly for this fate. Vecna didn't create Derek's darkness. He just recognized it and decided to use what was already there. The gang won't mourn Derek the way they mourned Eddie or Billy. They might feel guilty about his fate, might lose sleep over whether they could have saved him if they'd tried harder. But they won't grieve for him as a friend lost. At best, they'll grieve him as a failure, a child they couldn't protect from himself or from the monsters. That acknowledges a hard truth. Stranger Things has danced around for 4 seasons. Not everyone can be saved, and not everyone deserves the same effort. Will Byers deserve 6 days of Joyce refusing to accept his death, and 11 tearing through dimensions to find him? Holly Wheeler deserves whatever desperate gambit the gang attempts in episode 2. But Derek Turnbow, with his weak mind and weaker character, might only deserve becoming the bait that lures Vecna into a trap. The Duffers are confronting their audience with the question they've avoided asking directly: what do we owe the people we don't like? The ones whose suffering we can't quite bring ourselves to care about. Clearly Derek won't be the villain of season 5, but he might become something worse than a villain. He might become the sacrifice everyone agrees was necessary. The child whose death we accept because saving him felt inadvisable or simply not worth the cost. That willingness to write off certain lives as acceptable losses shows the true horror Derek Turnbow brings to Stranger Things. Not his cruelty, not his weak mind, but the cold calculation he forces onto heroes who have always refused to think that way before.